Good evening. It's Tuesday, January 6th, 2026. Welcome to the work session of the Board of Education for the East Rockaway Union Free School District. I'm going to call to order at 6:09 p.m. and we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So now we're going to have an internal audit presentation by Rich. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How you doing, Rich?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Yeah, see you guys again. So, over here?
Yeah, so I can give you. That's great.
Over here?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay. Hi, good evening. Richard Coffey, Director of Internal Audits with Cullen Danowski. With me here is partner Chad Ditter as well. So just kind of quick background into the internal audit function. Right? Districts have, with the internal audit function, we have two types of engagement each year that we conduct. One is an annual risk assessment update involving interviews and meetings with the various administrators and key employees within the district. During that engagement, we kind of talk about key changes from the previous year or in performing our previous risk assessment, changes in staff, any changes in procedures, processes, any new laws or regulations have come into play. I know the districts were quite busy over the last couple of years with some legislation kind of passed out from the state requiring certain scenarios, some of them involving board policies. I'll also talk about and follow up on prior risk assessment report recommendations that are open, as well as following up on a previous detailed testing report. Detailed testing engagements and reports, that's where we get more involved in terms of actually digging deeper into an area, performing selections, as the name says, right? Performing some testing, detailed activities. So when we meet the audit committee after our risk assessments, we met last year in February, both up to two reports at that point in time, which would be always an annual update on the risk assessment, as well as what area for detailed testing. So last year, we determined and make a decision also at the meeting, which we will do this evening, is what area we find kind of the best value add for us to perform a review in terms of the detailed testing area or areas for engagement. So last year, we determined, let's take a look at your special education area, particularly financial operations, special education, and it included grants as well. Given a component of your special operations, you have your grants. What we did was grants, we covered in addition to your grants related to special education, to your 611, 619, IDA grants. We also covered your ESSA grants, which are your title grants, which are maintained and managed by another section within the district. We also covered that as part of an overall review of grants and grants activities. So what we've done is, as we always do with our reports, we do preliminary reports, draft reports, we vet through with administration, go through the details, ensure accuracy, completeness. Also talk about the feasible reasonableness of the recommendations to enhance either processes and procedures, or if applicable, where it might be a compliance scenario. Go through that. Now we issued and hopefully an opportunity to go through the reports. The final draft, we'll leave it as a draft version for tonight because there are any other edits or changes need to be made. And then the process would be that the audit committee recommends that the board accept the reports. And then at that point, districts have 30 days of the board accepting of our reports to put together a board-approved corrective action plan. And that's something that's kind of pretty much a cycle that works each year. Okay. So first report I'd like to go through is the Special Education Financial Operations Grant Administration. It's the detailed testing. That was the engagement we performed initially. That's a background information here, talking about basically some of the standards, scope period, January 1 to March 31st. That's the time period when we do our sample selections with transactions and activities. That's the kind of the period that we would do for selecting such transactions for review and testing. Information about accounting standards and such. The format, the background section, which talks about some key information related to the department in terms of staffing. We've had some changes, within the department over this last couple of years. Also with administration and roles and duties, we've had some changes there as well. And also giving a little information related to special ed, one of the areas that we decided to select because it's a sizable component of your budget, right? It's got a very sizable amount of dollars associated with over $6 million now. I'm looking at 24.5 in terms of the annual cost related to the budget for your special education area. Also talk about tracking and monitoring of students, information here, right? Students with the individual education plan. Again, there's costs associated with those in terms of providers that you're assigning. So we looked at and monitored some of those. And then you have high cost aid. Right? Districts receive some high cost aid. That's driven by calculations that the state comes up with, and each district has its own particular amount in terms of thresholds. There's a cost threshold that comes into play. So basically, it's dollar amount spent on an individual student. Exceeding those thresholds, district is able to file and submit some high cost aid based again on a threshold on what the ratio and what the percentage is on the dollar amount. So you just want to see that you're managing and monitoring those students for possibility of getting some aid if they were to exceed those thresholds. So that's some of the information that's in your background section as well. Then once we determine the area, the procedures on page 4, that's from the engagement letter. So it's taking this determine which area we're going to be performing a review, go through, and we basically procedures usually entail review of what policies and practices, protocols related to the respective area, and then whatever testing that we do, looking at budget activity there, comparing budgets, then processes, procedures related to expenditures, payments, purchases, also billings. If you have activities between or either to or from other districts where students may participate in some programs within your district, or where you may be sending some students to other districts. So we look at and monitor and see if there's any activities there. And then again, you get into cost payments and ensure the accuracy of those dollar amounts, whether it be payments to districts or payments coming in, receipts from districts. And then looking at also this system, the STACK system, it's a system program that's used for managing, monitoring the activities related to the IEPs and the services provided to students. So there's a system there. So we look at access. So whenever we're thinking about employees' access to databases and systems, we want to look to see are there good controls over managing, monitoring those, ensuring that in addition to user accounts being active or inactive, there's also permissions. They might have different levels of permissions that are allowed, right? So we want to ensure that that's accurate and there's good management and oversight related to those activities. So then findings starting on page 4. It relates to findings could be information related to board policies, protocols, practices, information, or good business practices. If you identify a finding where there might be an opportunity for improvement or enhancements, we'll have a corresponding recommendation. And so, there's a number of policies obviously covering it and providing some oversight related to special education activities and students and such. Right? Then comparison of budgets we put in here as a review for the readers of the reports. Page 5, you can see kind of the trend of what's happening in terms of the dollar amounts. Right? So it's an area that has a sizable amount of budget and expenditures, as well as you'll see it's increasing as across the board, which is constant. All the districts, we have about 30 clients, right? And we're all kind of seeing increases in both either additional services and or cost related to the students in those areas. And then some more, other findings, information related to our exception of testing and reviews of POs and invoices. Well, and then looking at the system as I mentioned. 7, looking at user accounts as well. And you have various individuals within the system who want to look at those activities. Right, there's 245 active users, and your users are in addition to your employees. You may have some third-party providers may have access, which is appropriate, but you have to put some notes and information related to the system. So you just want to see that what the procedures are related to those activities. And then recommendations, written formal procedures. I just kind of continue developing those, covering key processes. Very extremely helpful in terms of transition and turnover and changes with staff. And employees, right? So you have something you can work with and it facilitates that turnover, transition, and the kind of the onboarding and learning curves for employees in a position. Reconciliation system user accounts, strengthen procedures related to the frontline system here by maintaining documentation of the annual reconciliation of user accounts. So there's a process that we go through. There was no full documentation maintained. Anytime there's a good system or process that's completed, it's always recommended that you kind of formalize it by having some kind of documentation or records showing that you perform such a benefit task. And then timely payments of the districts here, just with efforts to ensure payments of the districts related to tuition process time. Those are three recommendations related to the special education part we do. And we did separately the grants administration. So we did, since we covered both the EDA and the title grants, that's a recommendation related to grants, grants activities, right? Processes and procedures for submitting grants, who ensures that the grant expenditures are compliant and allowable per the guidelines into the respective grants. So each of the grants has some kind of unique scenario in terms of what's allowed and what are allowable cost rates. We want to ensure that there are processes in place to ensure that you follow grant guidelines. Information right to get the section of 611 and then that's the title one. Those are the larger of the grants within each of those categories. And procedures there again, just to review, interview individuals that manage and oversee the grants and the grant activities, and doing a selection of testing of the activities as well. And then some findings, some information related to such. Right, so it's as you file a grant, you have an application that goes in, then you can request some funds during the year, depending on the amount and the size and the dollar amount of grants. Maybe worthwhile consider submitting an FS-25 to request for some funds during the year. Small dollar amounts, generally you just file a final at the end of those dollars. So recommendations here. And also requirement two is have personnel activity reports are also something that's required. It's called the PAR form. Basically what that is some title grants and as well as the special ed grants allow costs or expenditures related to payroll employees. Just want to inform the employees need to sign a form and testing that they're aware that they're part of or their full salary is charged to such a grant. And they're obviously involved in grant type of activities, making allowable costs. The FS-25 form, as I mentioned, right, request for funds, considering the process, be able to periodically submit requests for funds, and then also continue with the written form, documenting those key tasks, performance, and what they turn. Any questions related to the special education?
Can I ask? So you spoke very quickly. I'm reading through it. You said that there were three recommendations. So if you had to bullet point them without the whole, I saw something about the frontline the management system.
Mhm.
Are we working on that?
Sorry, done.
Okay. I just want to,
System's called IEP Direct.
okay. So everybody can get on it now and work it.
It wasn't that people couldn't get on it, it's that there were some accounts that were, even though we'd taken access from specific parts of
Uh-huh.
the system.
They remained a
They
user
remained
listed,
systems.
but they couldn't get in.
Right.
Okay.
So we had to remove them.
There was that. What were the three major points?
I think there was
Frontline?
Yep, it was written form procedures. So
Okay,
page
okay.
7, because we broke it into two pieces. Right? So we broke this kind of the scope of work and the detailed testing into special education financial operations, which is the first section.
Yep, and I read that and understand that. I'm good.
Yep. So page 7 is three recommendations.
Okay.
There. And then the grants review, which is the second part of the report.
That's fine. The grants is fine.
4 or 5.
I'm good.
Any question?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
That one, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and the second report, risk assessment update report here, as I mentioned, information here, and the formats of the reports are similar to the formats in the previous year. We've got some introduction information related to the draft, the risk assessment report. As I mentioned, I follow up on recommendations from the previous risk assessment report, which was issued February 4th, 2025, is when we met next year. And the detailed testing, that night we reviewed the report. It was related to purchasing and disbursement. So those recommendations from that report also issued was February 4th. We followed up on those recommendations and included them in this report here. Talks a little about the corrective action plan, as I mentioned on page 3. We referenced that. And then page 4 and 5 is the table that we have. Tracks if you look at the date of detailed testing, basically that's the date where we performed a review of that specific area or areas, and then the date of the report. And then kind of control risks. The control risk there, fairly moderate, like testing, would be high if we found there were no control in place. but generally we'll be monitoring, doing some testing of the area to ensure that our understanding of the internal controls and processes related to that area actually, in place and designed to basically mitigate any potential errors, mistakes. And then after doing testing and clearing out any recommendations, they move from a moderate to a low. And then we've also done, if it's been a number of years since we've issued a detailed test report of an area, just because of the passage of time, we moved from a low to a moderate, haven't tested it in a while. So you'll see on page 4, right? So review of the cash and investment management bank reconciliations in 2018. Maybe that was a number of years ago, 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago, and moved from lower to moderate just because I passed. And the status of the other items, grant special ed, I'll put the dates in for tonight's meeting, finalize what's after this evening. And then what we'll do is also come back to this chart and table that we'll do is reference when thinking about the detailed testing for the next area. Moving on with the report, one of the things we've added to our risk assessments a few years ago are key changes, given that, as I mentioned, it's pretty much a key component of our risk report. Talking to all the administrators, finding what changes have taken place since the prior year. You can see a number of items in here. As board members, be aware of a number of these in terms of policy updates. And obviously, been very active and busy. Ex-officio board member, right? Some of the personnel changes that have taken place. Well, some different laws, right? One of Disha's law. Right? So those are all at 88 degree temperature. As you can see, we're ready to build cell phone. A lot of them, there's a numerous number of things put in place. We also have some financial information related to your financials, which your financial auditor, external auditor goes through those as part of your financials each year. That information in there as well. GASB 101 was another. GASB and keeping business offices and accounting firms quite busy. With these changes, new accounting standards that have been added, and then other information is by area. So that's how we kind of set it up. The risk assessment table also is kind of an index, and so we go by area there as well. Universal free school meals, there's another change. There's been various changes in the food service area over since COVID. So we got some information there as well. Information technology. And then we get to the recommendations on page 9. A couple of current recommendations related to human resources, employee offboarding, maybe developing procedures during the offboarding process as a part of the separation process with employees. We're requiring that they return their physical ID badges in addition to deactivation. Right? Extra classroom, a couple of recommendations there. Verification of individual club records as a part of the extra classroom process. Enhancements is good for the students to learn a little bit of business acumen, which includes bookkeeping. And part of the advisors of the clubs to be working with the students to ensure that they keep their own records in addition to your central treasury records. Kind of works as a good check and balance. Again, also gives them some financial skills, bookkeeping skills. And review of inactive clubs. And then there, just periodically take a look and review your inactive clubs. Are they plan on continuing going forward or not? Just basically as part of your financial extra activity fund, but that's issued. But help keep that money as well. And then some open recommendations the district's working on. So we'll follow up with these and new recommendations for next year's risk assessment. Payroll audits. So we're working on, in addition, even since we've performed the review here a little bit earlier this fiscal year, some of these things may have been closed out or close to being closed out, which I expect to close out risk assessment. And then a number of closed items that the district has addressed and closed out, starting on page 12 through the end of the report. Several items there, including a number of the ones that we followed up on related to the purchasing that we issued. Any questions related to the report, findings, recommendations with the next step? Okay, so we want to go back to page 4 and 5, please. There's it's the risk assessment table. So here, as I mentioned, we performed a review of an area. There's associated date of detailed testing. It also shows when that review was performed in terms of the year. We kind of use this, look through, and what we do is try to identify maybe key areas where there hasn't been a detailed testing review. I can look to see value where it might be in one of those areas. And then the next is to look at an area we might not have reviewed in a number of years. So kind of given those scenarios there, right? Like just look through and seeing some areas where we performed some detailed testing with other school districts, clients. And page 5 is a few areas here on capital assets, food service in the classroom, as well as student kind of related data and safety and security. Those are areas we've not performed review here at this district. So that's something that you consider for this year to perform a detailed review. Some of the things that we haven't performed a review on page 4 towards the top of the page, we generally have a lot of these things already in place. There won't be a lot of value in us doing kind of a detailed testing, for example, governance and planning, accounting and reporting. We have you already in place, your financials and stuff that are tagged. Everything's great, governance and planning, budget development, that pretty much said. Obviously, you have your presentations that you do and schedule each year. So I think they are pretty much, it's not until you get to maybe revenue and cash management, which are revenue management, billings, collection, costing receipts, depending on what kind of volume you might have, district, whether or not there's kind of be a lot of value added on that kind of as an area as well. So, so those are kind of, I guess, the areas to probably possibly consider. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, something, if you want to give that some thought, circle back with me. Sounds like that probably might be a better approach.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect. Any other
We're gonna
questions?
support. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Do you have any old business you would like to discuss?
Yep, two things. First, additional realignment staff meetings are coming up January 15th and January 28th this month. I'm anticipating after those meetings, I'll have more information to share with the public. So at that point, once we start continuing to build our drafts, I will start informing the public. So after the 28th, looking forward to having some more information, some more details. And the second thing is, there had been a few recent requests on curriculum before the holiday. Mr. Murray and Ms. Schneider and the principals put together a K-6 curriculum that's posted up on the website. And I'm going to have actually asked Mr. Murray to just give a quick demonstration on where to find it on the website. So if any parents have any questions about the curriculum, about anything they need to know, please feel free to reach out to Mr. Murray or myself, or, you can start with the elementary principals too. So, Mr. Murray, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. So based on several requests from parents to just have a better insight into what their students were learning in the classrooms on a daily basis, particularly in terms of ELA, reading and writing, I worked with Danielle Schneider, our literacy coach, Kristen Anesis, our director of humanities, Mr. Bigshorn, and Miss Kelly, our principals, to put together what we called an overview and curriculum guide. Our teachers have a very full, detailed, almost day-to-day guide that they use that would be too dense and really not necessarily accessible to parents who were not educators, because it's written for teachers to be used in the classroom. So we took all of that information and turned it into a document or set of documents that would be intentionally written to be accessible by anyone who has children in the school district. So I just want to very briefly show you where you can find that information if you were so inclined to look at it and report. And like Mr. DiTomaso said before, any questions, feel free to contact your child's teacher. It's always the best first person to go to. You contact your child's principal. I also am happy to talk to any parent who has any questions that they may have about the curriculum and what is being taught and how it's being taught in the classroom. So just very briefly, if you were to go to our homepage here, across the top, you've got a menu, and if you click on departments, you'll see curriculum. And if you click on the curriculum homepage, just an introductory letter from me, but if you just scroll down a very short way down the page, you'll see right in the middle the elementary literacy curriculum. And then each of those documents here is clickable and it will pull up a PDF file of that document. So we started with this elementary literacy framework document. So this is really the overarching philosophy and approach to literacy education in the district K-6. So this is a general document. It's not specific to any grade level, but it does talk about how we developed our curriculum, what we value in our curriculum, basically the core principles of a structured literacy approach. And then very briefly, it also has a picture of a typical literacy day in the classroom, the block of instruction and what kinds of instruction goes on in the classroom. And that would be similar pretty much K through 6, that approach to how the day is broken up. But if you were to go back, let's say you were curious about your 4th graders' specific curriculum, I can click on the 4th grade curriculum guidance document. And then this goes into much more detail. You can see that this is a 9-page document as opposed to just a front and back. And if you scroll through, and I'm not going to read it for you, you can certainly, please go to the website and look. But it introduces the key standards of the year for that year. It talks about the specific approach to instruction in that year. We have an structured literacy approach, we use explicit systematic instruction. It's aligned with the science of reading. We over here connect to the lifelong practices of readers and writers that come from the state education department, along with the learning standards. A description here of how students really learn to read, and that in this particular case, in 4th grade, they're moving away from figuring out how to say the word and really figuring out the meaning of the text as a whole, and that's a big shift in 4th grade for those students. Some of the things that students will do in the classroom on a daily basis, just a list of different activities they may have. It talks here about the 6 pillars of literacy instruction, the 6 really most important things that students will learn, which includes phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, oral language, and all of that leads to comprehension. And it talks about how we teach each of those things. So, for example, in 4th grade, our phonics work is moving to the morpheme level, which is parts of words rather than individual letter sounds within a word. We're looking at parts of words like root words, suffixes, prefixes, how I can read a multisyllabic word because I can see the pieces within it. And I know each of those pieces has a meaning. And if I kind of put those meanings together, I understand what that word means, even if I've never read it before. So that's really valuable work that we're doing in our upper grades. It mentions some of the different high quality instructional materials that we're using. And then it shifts over to writing and our approach to writing in the classroom. And how, again, that's a multi-skilled approach before you can become a truly proficient writer. And then finally, something that we're really proud of that we put towards the end, we do discuss how we're assessing students on a daily basis. That was one of the questions parents have was, how do I know my child's learning? And how do you know my child's learning? So we put information in there about some of the ways that we're assessing student learning. And then each grade document ends with the partnering with families segment. So that last segment of all of these documents talks about how families can work together with the teacher in the school to support their child's literacy learning. Now, one other thing that's not available on the website, but that parents will start receiving beginning with the next shift to new units, each unit will now have a letter home to the parents describing that specific unit's key learning elements and what's going to be going on in that classroom for the next few weeks. So we're trying to be, more transparent with families. We were never really trying to hide anything, but you talk about like risk assessment, like Mr. Coffey just talked about with us. We just didn't have procedures in place. So now we're putting procedures in place to very actively and transparently communicate with families on a regular basis what their student will be learning in the classroom over the next several weeks. We already have something like that in place for math. We've now added it for literacy. So that's something that we're really proud of.
Can I ask a question?
Please go ahead.
So a unit lasts 3 or 4 weeks?
It varies. So units could be as few as 3, as many as 6, depending on the richness of.
So it's kind of like a progress report card?
No, this wouldn't be a report card on what how the student has done. It'll be an introduction to what the students will be learning.
So I'm just questioning, so a teacher has 20 kids, do they have to individualize?
No.
For each kid, it's one for the
No,
class,
it's just-
okay,
it's
this is
one
what
for
we're
the
doing for
class.
6
This is
weeks.
like, for example, the next unit is writing argumentative essays.
Okay,
And kind of describing some of the things that will be going on in that argumentative essay.
It'll be a group message that just goes out to each parent, so parents should know, my child moved from this unit, now they're moving on to this unit.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
I think that was part of the request
Yes.
that parents are asking, and I think what it'll do is it'll allow parents to have those conversations with teachers
Mhm.
prior to having them assess, prior to the end of that argumentative essay, the parents can say, okay, what can you help my child with? And it'll give them a springboard to talk about.
And the other thing that it will do is it'll help the parent talk to their child about what happened in school today. We, for all of us who are parents, what'd you do in school today? Nothing. So, these letters will help parents know the answer wasn't nothing. Well, what about, blah, blah, blah. And it can start those dinner table conversations that really help foster the school home partnership. Yes.
Is there an outline that parents will get at the beginning of the year and say, basically, this is where we will be around this time frame, or is it something that's going to come out as they're moving to the next group?
So those letters will come out as they're moving to the next unit, starting with the next set of units. We didn't do this in the fall, but we're moving now from the winter forward doing it. But there is a document that does have a timeline for the year, and that can also be shared at the beginning of the year moving forward. So the teachers have that document, and that's definitely something we can share with families so they can know from the get-go, come November, we're going to be moving into this unit.
Right, just so parents know, I know my child will struggle with this, or I know my child will, excel in this portion. So then this way, the parents have an idea of where their child is and what they have to focus on, whether it's the whole entire thing or just portions of it, I think might be beneficial.
Yes. So those documents exist, and again, new, better procedures, those will be able to be shared.
And this is universal for the grade.
K6.
K6. Great.
And so the other place you can find it, so, I showed you originally that you can find it on the curriculum homepage, but I know that most parents are a lot more likely to go to their child's school page first. So if I were to choose Center Avenue, and if I were to go to the Center Avenue homepage, and if I scroll down, right here, the ELA curriculum guides are also posted on each school's homepage, so they're easy to find. They're posted in multiple places on our website for parents to very easily find.
and the teachers, I'm just asking it to ask it, the answer should be yes. So the teachers for 3rd grade, 2 in Center, 2 in Ream, they all have the same curriculum and they all follow the same thing.
They all have the same curriculum. So now remember, just to be clear, curriculum is what is learned. Teachers do have some flexibility with materials they choose to make that learning happen. So students will all read perhaps the same novel over the course of the year, but the specific ways that teachers get students connected to that novel may vary from classroom to classroom. That's where their kind of academic freedom, and it gives the teachers the ability to have their passion in the room. But yes, students are all learning the same main ideas, contents, and skills.
Just wanted to ask.
Thank you.
I was a little afraid of the answer.
And Ms. Doyle, that was not always the case. So, if you were to ask that question 10 years ago, I might have to give you a different answer.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you that the answer today is whether you're in Center or Rain, whether you're in Teacher A or Teacher B, the curriculum is the same for each child. There just may be some different flavors added as far as
Personalities,
the resources that are used.
Okay, Thank you. Thank you.
And I want to say that we'd love to have parents, if you have questions about curriculum, please feel free to reach out. We like sharing those great details, and I want to thank Mr. Murray and the team, and Kristen and the principals for really,
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a true team effort. There was no way one person was putting all of this together.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
that's it for old business.
So, did you all review the minutes from the work session and special meeting 12/9/2025?
Mhm.
Any
Yes, no
questions?
question.
Nope, no question.
Did you review the minutes from the board meeting the regular board meeting, 12/16/2025?
Yes.
No question.
No question.
And do you have any questions on the next board agenda for January 13th?
Do not.
Motion to adjourn the work session.
Motion.
Motion, second?
6:45.
Is there a second one?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
It's official? Okay. So the meeting is ending at 6:45 PM.
Thank you.